Today's episode is brought to you by our patron supporters. Today's patron of the day is Terry. You know, patrons get the show always ad-free, plus extended episodes with bonus content. Though occasionally, like today, there isn't an extended episode. But ad-free all the time. And other perks. Go to The Line's Patreon, patreon.com/calltheline. That is patreon.com/calltheline. Welcome, everybody. This is The Line Has a Podcast. I'm Jimmy Snow, and let's just sort of address the elephant in the room. First of all, it's Monday, February 17th. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. This emergency summit that's going on, talking about Ukraine, a weird cult thing that's going on, cult murders. There's this stuff that's going on that we'll also talk a little bit about. But obviously, we're going to be talking about Trump, bring up a little bit about AI. Today will be a slightly shorter show because, as you have noticed, I am alone. And let's talk about why. I received, it's obviously Monday morning, and I received notice this morning that everybody has quit The Line. It's just me now. So I will be doing everything. I will be doing all 6 live shows a week. I will be hosting the Sunday show twice on Sundays. I will do Skep Talk as the representative of science. I will do Chewed Gum. I will do the show about women's issues. It'll be the Hang Up with Jimmy Snow. It'll be the Transatlantic Call-In show. That one's a little messed up, but you know, the show has to go on. Everybody has quit. And now all 20 or so hosts, they're all gone. So it will be me, wall to wall, me every day. And then also doing the podcast now by myself going on because also all of the guest hosts and friends I have also all said that they are done. Now, none of what I just said is true, but somebody somewhere was like, oh my God, what did he do? And that's how he would, if everyone quit, is that really that's what he would do? Yes, I would become the sole host and I would do no, if everybody quit, I'd just quit. Like, I'd probably just evaporate, I assume. I would just quit existing. Just into the ether. No, it was already, Promise was already going to be gone today. We had a person filling in for Promise, which I guess I announced on the show the other day. It was going to be Footless Joe. Footless Joe, however, quite sick. And Alyssa, also quite sick. Got a really nasty flu and got stranded in California. I understand she's now like working her way back. She finally tested negative for it. And I believe is becoming the like Tamiflu spokesperson. Apparently it just really did wonders for her. Or her flu turned around really because she has like a good immune system, which I think is the case based on just knowing her. And the other day she was messaging how this is the sickest she's ever been. And I was like, wow, really? But you know, I'm not trying to, that's no shade. I'll tease her about it. But the sickest I've ever been, I've never been like, you can text back. Like that's still pretty okay. Obviously you can still be very, very sick in text, but anyway, I believe that means she has a very good immune system because she hasn't been incapacitated by illnesses before and is able to just like turn around and fly back. And so it could be either. It could be the Tamiflu actually did, or maybe the Tamiflu even helped and shortened, or mostly that her immune system just turns the flu around very, very quickly. It could be, you know, either or. And I would bet it's some combination of the two, and this is unimportant. Look, you got me for the day. I do have some stuff I want to talk about. There's definitely things on my mind. I'm going to be a little less formal today. We're just going to kind of knock these things out and then probably call it a day. As I said, it'll probably be shorter because despite the fact that people have mentioned I do like to talk a lot, believe it or not, I don't enjoy it as much without somebody to talk with, to add to the conversation. Believe it or not, the sound of my own voice is not something I relish in. In fact, specific to the voice, I find my own voice repulsive. Maybe that's why I make fun of Elon's voice, because I feel like we are cut from the same peanut butter in mouth cloth. When I was actually a teenager, I was in school. I've probably told the story too many times, so I'll just say the short version, which is I had to make a concentrated effort to change the way I speak when it was brought to my attention that the way I was speaking was so poor, which is probably what ultimately eventually led to the whole, now I say button and mountain, but I wasn't saying any consonants and I was not putting spaces. And every now and then I'll catch myself slip back into it. It's something that a number of family members I have do as well. But it's kind of just for an example, it kind of sort of when it's talking like this and you don't really put all that much space in your words and you're just like, on the subject, let's talk about the real then and the first season was wrapped up today. It was like that kind of not being deliberate with your tongue in your mouth. And now I'm a super famous podcaster. So, joke's on you people who made fun of me for it. I want to talk about AI sex dolls. So we're going to get there today, but let's talk about the question of the day. And we may be changing the way we do it because funny enough, a lot of times, whatever question of the day we put in, the places where comments are had, very few people actually care to discuss it. But I wonder if you'll all want to discuss this one. For the most part, last week's, whether or not Valentine's Day is a good thing or whatever, most people are like, meh, doesn't really matter to me. One person said something along the lines of, it just reminds me I'm single. Been there, done that, and that doesn't feel very good. But, for the most part, not a terribly engaging topic, it would seem. So this week is one that I do find interesting, and I'd love to see the actual conversations butt up. Maybe I'll also put it in our subreddit, r/the Line Podcast or something like that. The link will be in the description. The Line Pod, it might be r/Line Pod. I'd have to look it up. I'm so unprofessional. I was going to say today, but truly it's an all the time problem, as I am an all the time problem. But I would love to see some actual discussion on this. And speaking about AI and the roles it's going to fill, making people feel less lonely, which is a problem in the world. I know a lot of people don't care to hear about it because it especially affects men. And it's kind of like we're tired of having to solve all of their problems before we can solve it. And fine, totally fair. But regardless, it is a problem, and it's not for just men. There is a loneliness epidemic in the world. A lot of people lacking best friends or lacking best friends they actually feel like they can trust. So to have a confidant that you actually feel like knows you very well, who adapts you very well, responds very well, essentially an AI companion. And I'm wondering, the question then would be, do you see yourself as having an AI companion in the future? Now, here's the thing. I think a lot of people will not admit if they think so. And so it will take a little bit of bravery to comment on it. It'll take a little bit of like telling the truth. I'm sure most people are going to be like, no, are you kidding me? However, maybe they'll even think that initially. I think it's wild for anybody to really suggest that they would never have any at any level. And so then the question becomes, what level would it be? Would it be a simple companion that is like a virtual assistant, or do you see yourself as opening up to it? I've actually shown therapists, multiple now, the way AI is pretty effective as like a supplementary therapist, someone you can go to and have a speaking conversation with, depending on the model you're using. I'm not going to recommend any specific one here just for the sake of, I don't know why I care actually, but for the moment, it just seems smart not to without going deeper when it's appropriate and when it's not, but showing like how effective it is. It's saying like, hey, these are the things that are on my mind. Can you help me talk about them? And then also, can you give me some things to work on, some exercises? Right now, I'm dealing with this type of anxiety every day. Can you give me some CBT or DBT, different methods of handling them? And so these being cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, which are both very effective for things like anxiety, OCD, and the like. And so what would you say are the limits that you would put on a companionship with AI, regardless of, let's just say the AI will be fully capable of filling any role, could fill the role of a therapist, a doctor, a lover, a best friend, a virtual assistant. Let's say that it is capable of doing it effectively, healthily, that it could do it. So where would you stop with it? I would love to hear and see and read. I would almost be, if enough people engage with it, I'd be tempted to do a special episode just talking about that, maybe with a panel of people. So if enough of you engaged with it, that potentially could be the case. But I'd love to see a good, robust discussion. I'll be checking the YouTube comments. Spotify has comments now. I'll be checking Spotify comments. I'll check the Patreon comments. It's obviously the first place we always check, patreon.com/calltheline. And just see how robust a discussion is coming up there, because it's very interesting to me. And I'd also love for people who are interested in this discussion to see, you don't even have to say necessarily what type of AI companion you foresee yourself using. If you have an idea of AI type companions that you think will be popular or will be an option, I'd love to see that too. Because I think it's going to be a lot. I think there's going to be a lot. I think there's going to be in the creative space, like basically having a photographer friend that you could bounce things off of while you're editing. What problems do you see here? As an over the shoulder talking person, or potentially even like can make some of the changes for you, or a musician where you're like, hey, let's talk about this and this. I'm going to play something for you. And it can be like, hey, that's cool. However, from a technical side, you broke into triplets very quickly there in a way that actually it's technically a little rusty, but if you feel like whatever, however it has to sound. And I think they will talk to you very informally, almost like a super genius who's trying to fit in, where you're trying to be very approachable, very appealing. I'd be very interested to read what people think is coming, because I will tell you that I've been talking about AI since long before ChatGPT, for example, or AI image generators. Even in the YouTube space, though a lot of them was happening in like Discords that other YouTubers and YouTube organizations had, where we would have essentially debates. And I got to tell you, the number of people who owe me a fruit basket in apology for telling me all the things I was going to be wrong about, that I have already been so right about so far, about what kinds of jobs it will come for. Which, I mean, the true enough answer is most jobs. Like there will be some jobs that maybe it won't come for because we just kind of decide not to let it, but it won't mean that it won't be capable. And we talked a lot in those spaces about the creativity of the AI. It's not going to replace creatives. And it's not going to replace creatives just being creative for the sake of creativity. It has already put artists out of work or dramatically changed their approach to work. And so now you already have maybe AI as a supplementary tool, as a phase toward getting rid of them. But, there's a lot of copyright editors, a lot of photo editors having to change their prices and stuff. And the fact of the matter is photography is pretty much doomed. There will probably always be a few photographers who know how to put all the tools together in a unique way and come up with fun things. And so people will keep, but when you're talking about the mass number of working photographers or working artists of any kind, it's already cut into that. And people who haven't been able to keep up with just having AI as a supplementary tool are already losing their jobs. We're way past if you do use AI, you are unethical, because these huge companies are doing it. And so if you want to survive now as a small company, you have no choice. And you don't even have a choice now to not use AI to consume content. Whatever algorithm you are being presented content nowadays is using AI systems to get that to you. So there is no hiding from it. You can't consume or produce in our economy in any ethical way, and now without AI somewhere along the lines messing with things. So that's an interesting conversation I wanted to begin. I've been talking about it a little too long for a topic that we're not actually covering today. So we'll go ahead and move on. I do want to make a correction from the last episode, or maybe it was the episode prior. I think it was last episode. The lead guitarist of Journey is not the one that is married to Paula White. It is in fact the keyboardist. I had said guitarist. It is the keyboardist from Journey, married to Paula White. So it was very important that we go ahead and change that. And just as a general discussion pointer, as a general thing on my mind, if you all haven't catched, now season 1 of Dexter Original Sin, and I hope there's going to be more, but Dexter Original Sin is finished. The whole first season is on Prime Video. What little influence I can have to say, please go watch it. I know it's not much, but please go watch it, because it's really good. And I really want them to make more. It's like really good. It's like as good as the early seasons of actual Dexter. I forgot how much, having watched Dexter New Blood in the last couple seasons of Dexter, I forgot how much I can enjoy that series. And holy smokes, it's very, very enjoyable. I'm hoping that whatever magic dust they have for that, maybe it just is that it's like way easier to enjoy a character whose development you are watching, as opposed to a few seasons in where you like have all these developed characters and now you're just assessing like, Are they going the direction? Are they maintaining that excitement, that feeling of change and development? I don't know. I don't know what that feels like. It's probably a part of it. I'm hoping though, whatever magic dust they have, they also this June, no, not this June, next June. No, that is this June, 2025 June. Dexter, a new series of Dexter that takes place after New Blood, called Dexter Resurrection, is also coming out, and so that will be. We'll see how they do. That'll be interesting. We're gonna see. They have really cool people joining the cast too. Uma Thurman, Uma Thurman, Uma Thurman's gonna be in it, as well as Peter Dinklage. All right, so that and the AI companion stuff. Let's jump into the actual news stories for today, starting with Macron has called an emergency European summit related to Ukraine. That is, the French President Emmanuel Macron has convened an emergency summit in Paris to address concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's unilateral approach to peace talks with Russia. And let's just be clear here. They are freaking out, as they should, because Donald Trump, like if we were talking about the 1930s, it would be like America was like, we're just going to get in here and see if we can cut this off before it happens. What if we just let Germany kill 3 million Jews? And then we just call it okay. Like that's good. Like half of, we're just going to let them have, but it's in a way, like even that's not correct, because they're pretty much just giving them everything. Like any of their so far gains, you don't get a gain more, but your so far gains. Basically European leaders are super alarmed that Trump has announced these peace talks with Russia and Ukraine, completely sidelining Europe. It's just him on the phone with Putin, and they are trying to cut them out. And look, the EU, these are very important allies, the EU and Canada, that Donald Trump, the hubris of the man is incredible. He thinks he can cut these people out. He can't. And you have criticism coming from all over the place. The British Prime Minister, who is Starmer, I think is their name, calling out very starkly that this is basically, it's not just weakening our, like the EU's national security, the British national security, it is also weakening American national security. It is a huge national security risk to have this really, I don't even know what else is there even to say about Donald Trump and how stupid he actually is. And not to mention, you have then Ukraine, you have Zelensky essentially talking about these deals happening about them without them, and has now declined this meeting or this agreement that we were working toward, where basically in exchange for our support, our protection, we were going to get up to 50% of the mineral resources, which are worth $500 billion, out of Ukraine. And he basically was like, no, that's off. You're literally talking to this dude. You're talking to Putin about me without me. You're talking to him. You're making promises. You're sitting here and acting like we don't actually, what we want out of it doesn't matter. That Putin has done these it's very brilliant. The way Putin negotiates, he comes in and what he does is he just starts murdering, and he doesn't mind if his people die 10-1 because he doesn't die. It's a very clever, it's brilliant. It's very smart when you think about it. He has given those types of speeches about, it's very smart the way he's doing things, completely not addressing, when Trump goes, we got to stop it. We got to stop the bloodshed because that bloodshed, it is so bad. The bloodshed, yes, is bad. The Ukrainian innocent people shouldn't be dying. It's funny how nobody brings up that it is like, it's something crazy, like 10-1, 20-1. Russians dying, like Russian soldiers, they're dying a lot more. Like Russia is getting, it's honestly incredible that Ukraine is able to hold back so much and do so much with like drones, for example. And we're not talking like the drones that Obama was committing war crimes with. We're talking about like little DJI guys, little handheld, throw them in the air, have them carry a grenade, just make it let it go. The things they're doing with drones over there is absolutely wild. But basically, because I don't know what Trump thought. He was like, what if we totally back out on getting you anything back and fixing anything? And we don't guarantee you any security deals. Will you please go ahead and sign that agreement for 50% of your mineral resources? And so what is the alternative here? To Trump, it's like, okay, well, if you don't sign it, then we're going to do even less than nothing. Like, I suppose we're going to actually now we're telling you to sign it, or we'll just let him finish taking over your country and disrespecting the sovereignty of your nation and putting, again, our own country's national security at risk. And then Russia just gets 100% of those minerals. It amazes me that people think that he is a genius, that he's like this genius deal maker, when I feel like I could broker better deals. And I've done a little bit of haggling at flea markets. I'll tell you that. I can't haggle. As I said that, I'm remembering a time I walked into a card shop and asked them if they do it like for like the distributions of new boxes of things. It was Pokemon cards, and I was like, do you guys price match like what the like standard price is off of the website or off of it? And they were like, nope. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even try to push it, but I also didn't buy. They were like a 30% markup. I was like, bro, you can still order these online. What are you doing? Were the kind of place. I think they actually went out of business. They were the kind of place that would try to raised the prices when there were shortages, but apparently hadn't gotten the memo that this one didn't yet have a shortage. So if anything, you're just hoping, I guess, to early on get the people who don't know that, or maybe you're predicting that there will be a shortage. So you may as well just start with the price above 30%, because eventually people will come in. That's probably what it is. As I'm saying it, I'm realizing it. If you know, ultimately you're going to get to charge that price, why even wait to do it? Yeah, people will be upset, but then they're going to come back later when the shortage does begin. Makes sense. Terrible business practice if you care about people, but because it's all about getting them dollars. And I guess you're trying to do it. You're trying to be the, what are the bots on the internet who make artificially make the supply low? They scrape all of everything up. They're trying to be the scalpers before the scalpers come in. I don't get why people find this guy so brilliant. I don't get why anybody doesn't see that he's just a plain out idiot. And I don't get how we are, I get wanting to be, despite the fact that I disagree with it, I understand the logic behind, if you want to call it that, America first, that you want to say, no, take care of our people more than others. But America alone, America only, for a threat that is so localized to Europe, and then to have this asshole Kellogg, named after the chronic masturbator who made it everybody else's problem to invent cornflakes. I quite like Frosted Flakes though, so take that with a grain of salt. They are delicious. I haven't had them in so long, and I hope I get to have them again, because that was one of the last foods that I got rid of, was corn-based foods. They were causing me so much pain. Anyway, where was I? Where even was I? Kellogg is Trump's EU envoy dude. And he's over there telling them, yeah, no, you don't get a seat. Europe, none of you get a seat at the table. This country you are landlocked with, and that we're talking about the potential of leaving NATO, or trying to threaten that we might leave NATO. Maybe it's a hollow threat. I don't know. But the threat is out there. You have that idea, and it's like, okay, if you leave NATO, they're going to invade Europe. If America left NATO and basically said, Russia, we're not, whatever, you do you. And then you would just have a very familiar repeat of what had happened. Again, it always depresses me to say, not even 100 years ago. We couldn't even make it a century. We couldn't wait another 10 years to have our new Hitler rise up, and then the subsequent decade that would follow. You couldn't wait that long. We couldn't do another century. It's almost laughable now, the concept of a phrase like never forget, because we forgot. Not only did we forget, certain individuals who should have forgotten the least have forgotten the most, and now are doing similar things to people in Gaza. But let me get off of that specific soapbox, because that's just where my mind constantly lingers to, constantly drifts to. It is It is a terrifying time to be alive because even if Donald Trump himself doesn't fuck us over, he is going to leave us weaker. He is on track to ruin our economy, perhaps in a way that will be delayed, much like they do things like the tax cuts, where it is delayed, where it initially looks nice, but the actual long-term effect. However, some of these things he's doing so quickly, so radically, I don't know if he actually can get away like he did in 2020, where he was able to say anything that was starting to show up. That was the pandemic, not him, so it couldn't be his fault. And then the things that he contributed to, like inflation via the tax cuts, via the tariffs, he can just blame on Biden because those do have a delayed reaction effect. But how much he's trying to do at once, cutting all of these agencies and everything, and not returning the money actually disproportionately is going to be returned to rich people. Not to rich people will get more out of those cuts he's making than they put in the first place. That's how it's going to work, and how he's always doing his work. Uh, he may not be able to escape those negative consequences this time by the end of his term. Now, whether or not he escapes criticism by the end of his term because cholesterol wins, different question. Totally different question. And then if anything goes bad, the people who were in the Trump cult, who won't even believe he's actually dead, or whatever weird culty thing he's going to do, they'll do about him, will blame the next person, even if it is, say, JD Vance, if anything goes bad. Well, when Trump was doing it, it was great. And that will be the platform upon which eventually a Trump son is going to run. Though I wonder if it will happen while he's alive, because I don't know if any of the Trump sons will be able to paint this picture of having their father's full support and love and the idea that they think he's brilliant or whatever else while Trump is alive, because Trump can't help himself. Trump has already sort of tipped his hat that he thinks his children are idiots, except perhaps Barron. But even that one, who knows? Who knows what he thinks about Barron? We're going to take a break. I'm going to take a break. And when we get back, we will be talking about a couple of things, including Donald Trump, I think, has got mask off with what a dictator he is, as well as this cult stuff that is happening. Murders that are happening across the U.S. You might want to know if it's happening in your state, though you aren't necessarily in danger, even if it is. As well as a couple of other things, some science stuff, and of course the talk about the AI sex dolls, because it's on my mind like crazy. I won't lie to you all. I think about it a lot, about AI companionship in general and what my own limits would be. And there's actually been some development.
This episode is brought to you by the amazing people on patreon.com/calltheline, where you can get the show ad-free and you get the extended episodes where we do bonus shows, which is most of the time. Head over to patreon.com/calltheline and sign up today.
All right, welcome back. If you've been on the internet at all, if you go to places like Twitter, though I hope you've left that Nazi conglomerate, if you go to places like Threads, if you go on Reddit, I'm sure you have already seen, but if you haven't, Donald Trump, I think, just getting closer and closer to just saying, yeah, I'm a fascist. I'm a fascist. Frankly, people say that word, but is it such a bad word? Because if it describes me, it must be good. Full dictator coming. He has tweeted, he's returned to Twitter, because of his little buddy, his boss, really, floating around, which, by the way, we had that disagreement the other day. Myself, Seth, yeah, I know, another tangent. Myself, Seth, and Promise, talking about whether or not Trump is bothered by these things. And my point was kind of like, doesn't matter if he's bothered, because he'll see that it's on a lot. All he cares about is that he absolutely, he needs to dominate news cycles. And then he'll call his friend Hannity and they'll do something to say, to counter program it. And so this whole thing about it's President Musk and Vice President Trump and whether or not he recognizes that is purposely being done to drive a wedge between them. Well, literally the day that episode came out, Trump does a joint interview with Elon Musk on his side with Hannity, on Hannity's show with Hannity. And they address it. And I love my friends. I don't think I'm more right than them because I'm smarter than they are, for the record. In fact, quite the opposite. I don't think I'm smarter than Seth. I don't think I'm smarter than Promise. I think these are two brilliant, brilliant people. I think that have a better, I remember more recently, and in the case Promise couldn't remember, what it's like to be a Christian nationalist, self-obsessed, egotistical, misogynistic, racist piece of shit, and the ways in which that operates. And the ways in which when you just think you are the top of the world, that yours is the most important penis. I don't even know that Seth's brand of Christianity in the past ever came close to what Mormonism teaches you about the importance of your penis that I would have had. And so I don't think I'm smarter. And even saying that I just remember better, I feel like is not necessarily fair, because I would actually say it's more of a negative. I think that I have a forced attention internally to that part of me, and I purposefully work against it. And I think Seth has probably actually just fully become a good guy. And I think Promise has just fully become a good woman. And I think I'm internally perhaps a terrible man who recognizes that that man is terrible, who remembers those impulses and chooses every day to live against them. Now, it's not this incredible struggle. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that I'm like, tempted to go out and murder puppies or the metaphorical equivalent of what we're talking about right now. But I am saying that I can hear that shitty little voice still back here. And I still know, I think it's why I like fighting with Republicans, because I'm like, guys, I was one of you yesterday. I know what you think. I know how you think, because part of my brain still thinks that way. But the part of my brain that now can outthink that is more logical than that, I can now, I can't operate that way ever again, because I know how dishonest I have to be to think that way, to behave that way. So I think it has created a tremendous weird empathy that I can have, not necessarily a positive empathy. Empathy being like a sympathy that you more than just experience toward a person, but you relate to. A weird empathy toward terrible people, because I understand where it comes from and the work that it takes to stop being that way, which again, I think I've mostly done, but it's just still in there. It's just still that little monster in there that you recognize. It's there, and you're just like, oh, right. That piece of shit, it's never going to go away completely. But it would never, I don't think it would feel good to bring back out, but I know it's in there. I know I'm like touching the part of my head I think it actually resides in, just at the back left. I don't know what's back there. I can't remember my brain anatomy. It's been years, but something back there is doing it. Somebody will put something in the comments, be like, you might have a point here. That's the part of your brain that controls, I don't know, probably erections. Like realistically, that's going to be the part of the brain that most of the worst decisions of my life ever came from. Anyway, Donald Trump. Did I even tell you the tweet? This was all to say that Seth and Promise might be too good of people to put themselves in the mindset of a monster, and how that monster is appeased, and what actions those moves are, what actions that person's going to do. Even if internally they've had the experience, they have to have some level of hope that it's not going to be quite as bad, or have that level of hope of like, here's the thing we have to hold on to. This thing that is outside of our power that hopefully it can like fix it for us. And I suffer no such experiences of hope. They just have more hope than I do. It has nothing to do with intelligence. They're both brilliant people. Both of them are much smarter than I am. I just happen to be better on this specific topic at predicting what's about to happen, because I'm a monster inside. But I'm trying to get better. Donald Trump has tweeted, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." He who saves his country does not violate any law. This shit goes back to like Napoleon shit, people. But dictators, and Nixon tried to say, when the president does it, it's not criminal. That wasn't a very good Nixon, was it? I love Futurama. That's a little thing forever. I can't even do it. It is the hallmark of authoritarians as they rise to power to basically say, no, because I do it for my country, it's not breaking the law. And here's the thing. The Supreme Court kind of told him that that's true also. it's so vaguely put, but if it's in the service of the nation, he can break no laws. And so what those limitations are, even on what the Supreme Court affirmed, have yet to be tested. And I don't think anybody's feeling very confident. Certainly I am not, as that unhopeful monster who understands what these people's minds are like as though it's one of my own. I don't have any hope that the Supreme Court is going to come through for us, especially as you even get these people like John Roberts, who are the people sort of maintaining some level of normalcy, often being that differing vote. Who are they themselves talking about retiring? I would say it's bleak, but bleak even sounds optimistic. It's cataclysmic, perhaps is better than bleak. It's not good. It's bad. And Donald Trump tweeting out, "He who saves his country does not violate any law," is speaking like Mussolini, is speaking like, obviously we can make a million Hitler comparisons a day. But we know he does this. We know he talks about how he feels chosen by God, and that ultimately this is the thing authoritarians are made of. So I'm alarmed, and I think we have to see how that plays out. I think that we will see probably more things with that theme, priming people to be ready for him to way overstretch, to way push out this, as he knows legal challenges are coming, and the Supreme Court, they're going to begin ruling on some of the crazier shit he is doing and Elon is doing, and maybe trying to broadcast to the Supreme Court, like, you're going to want to try to figure out a way to make it work, because anything you come back with may end up hurting you more than it hurts me as people, as individuals. That's enough of Trump for the day. Let's just jump through a couple more things. This is some news that I've just started to track on. I'll probably be looking more up and giving you more updates, but there's apparently this cult that has been murdering people literally across the country. There are murderers in Vermont. There are murders in Pennsylvania. There's murders in California. It's this cult-like group called the Zizians, which are named after this guy. I can't remember his name. And I think I must have I think I must have been so sure that I would remember his name that I didn't even include it in here. Anyway, there's at least 6 deaths connected to the group, possibly twice as many total deaths out there. Again, across states, Vermont, Pennsylvania, California. Amongst the victims are a border control agent, and an elderly couple in Pennsylvania. And so the FBI has now a task force to launch the whole thing. It's the stuff of movies. It's very, I don't know. I'm just getting started looking into it. But leave a comment or something where you can if you're wanting to hear more on this, because it's something that I'm keeping track of. This has been updated as recently as Sunday, so this is an ongoing thing. There are individuals, key figures that they are looking out for. They're urgently searching for an individual named Jamie Zajko. They are suspected of buying the firearms that were used in these killings. Yep, it was with guns. I love America. And there are other key figures like Teresa Youngblood and Felix Backholt, who is apparently also called Ophelia, or maybe that's their other last name. I don't know. Anyway, I can't remember all the reasons why I included some of these notes, but they are looking into these murders being connected to this group and these online radicalization forums. But it's wild because they're talking about this and like, this cult group, they're radicalizing, but we don't fully know what the key nature of their radicalization and their cult beliefs actually are. And so we don't know if this is more of a Keith Raniere thing or a Tom Jones thing. That's not correct. And now Tom Jones is blocking my head. Jonestown thing. But the person that I was wanting, oh my God, I won't be able to do it. I'll just be thinking, it's not unusual to be loved by anyone. Anyway, they're called the Zizians. Zizians. And I'm finding myself immediately and preliminarily fascinated by these people. Oh, I did not mean to do that, but you know what? That's as good a time as any to go ahead and take a break. Though this would be the break audio, and then we'll come back with our with the last stories of the day, talking about AI and talking about some scientific breakthroughs with weight loss potentially coming that would be slightly different than already these breakthroughs like Ozempic, like Mounjaro, these GLP-1s. There's actually a new approach that has the potential to also be effective. So that's going to be interesting. I have a very complicated relationship with this topic. Obviously, as a person who is now, I like bringing it up every chance I get, 80 pounds lighter than you saw me just last year, just in April. So we'll talk more about that when we return.
Would you like to be one of the cool people who can prove they were supporting this podcast right from the beginning? Well, you can. Head over to linemerch.com. That's linemerch.com and pick up some founders merch for The Line as a podcast that will only be available for a short time and features the rough draft drawn logo that soon will be updated to look less like it was drawn by a 3-year-old. That's linemerch.com.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for being here today. And let's start off by talking about this new potential treatment for obesity. And as I was kind of mentioning before the break, this is one of those topics where it's a very fraught topic, because there really is a very strong, loud, even talking about treating obesity, dieting, suggesting that being thinner is even conditionally better than being fatter, is fat shaming. And I use that word conditionally in there on purpose, and somebody will purposefully ignore it and still try to attack me anyway, because that's just how it is. That's how it works. And I am a person who, look, my medical situation is more complicated than this. But last year when the weight loss began, it was because I was essentially, I don't know if it would be exaggerating to say it was killing me. And I was getting now to a point that continuing the life as I had wouldn't have probably been sustainable for much longer, or potentially wouldn't have been existing for much longer. As in, I would imagine that my life, just for example, the sleep apnea, when it was discovered how severe my sleep apnea was, 55 events per hour. I was told that on average, when a person has it that bad, if it continues to go untreated, and it probably had gone untreated at that level for a while, maybe not quite up to 55, but still in the severe category, for at least a couple of years. I know that it was some signs that I had it were relayed to me from partners, even 3-4 years prior to it. And this was before I had then put on additional weight. But that when your sleep apnea is that bad, if you look at the mortality rates, it's something like on average people, when it gets into the very severe level, they tend to die of strokes and heart attacks within 6 to 7 years. Your mortality gets just like really, really cut down. And so now that is actually only a piece of everything that happened. And in a weird way, I'm fortunate and unfortunate. My health situation is very unfortunate. My health situation got so bad in a way that I didn't have much choice but to get better in ways related to how my eating habits were so bad, because I was getting so sick now from eating, having these responses from my body. And I at the moment, I'm not going to go into terrible detail. If I can get, I'm thinking about on Jimmy Snow as a podcast, seeing if I can reach out to this guy from the Mayo Clinic who, one of the conditions that I may talk more about is one called bile acid malabsorption. And this was the thing that basically isn't a thing that itself will kill you at all. But in conjunction with everything else that was going on, it becoming really more severe led to a situation where I couldn't really eat much of anything, plus some other autoimmune responses that I was having, and got down to like couldn't eat much and I couldn't eat much things, as in quantity in a day, how much I could consume in a day was dramatically cut. And then what my options to eat was dramatically cut. As you've probably heard me say many times, the number kind of changes. It was for the quite a long period recently, only 3 foods a day, basically chicken breast, potatoes, rice, and white rice, mind you, potatoes at least in a couple of different forms, but not with like seasonings or anything besides salt. And then having to supplement all the other stuff. Well, I'm now up to like 5 foods, though my body's having difficulty adjusting to some supplements and stuff too. I think it's the supplements. It's hard to tell between, but we're adding some more stuff in and messing with some more stuff. And anyway, So much of it was so much worse. When I saw a cardiologist last year, he had the test results from prior to when I saw him. Obviously prior to when I saw him, prior to when like the stuff had all started happening around that same period of time in April when all these dramatic changes happened. And he had like my blood work, which included my lipid panel from before that. Meanwhile, I didn't see this cardiologist until November, I want to say. And so he walked in, first of all, I think surprised to see a person who clearly wasn't the weight that was still on his notes. I had by that period of time, by then I had already lost 60 or so of the 80 pounds that I've lost. And so he walks in, sees a person who's clearly not 280-ish pounds, 276, I think was my height. 200, but I'm just going to always round 280-ish pounds sitting in front of him. And he's like, oh, okay, these are bad. Like these are bad. And it took you a long time to get here. And I was like, hey, so the good news is here's the paper copies. These are actually my current results. These are as of like a week. And it was basically, he was able to look, he's like, yeah, just so you know, you've essentially communicated to me, you've gone from you shouldn't count on a long life to now certain parts of your health related to, again, cardiology, my cholesterol, which is obviously made up of multiple numbers and different things in my metabolic blood panel. They had all improved a lot. And so it was kind of like you're these in a few short months, you have turned things around and now you actually can count on having a life. And so, all this to say is to kind of open up about my own challenges, my own struggles with health issues. Again, I'm probably never going to share everything. I'm pretty private about stuff. The stuff with the bile acid malabsorption. Part of me wants to do a dedicated video. Again, I'm going to see if I can talk to this guy from the Mayo Clinic, who's done so much of the research. I just have to reach out and try and see if he'd like to talk about it because I think everybody needs to know about it. Because so many people, if you are diagnosed with IBS-D, that would be D standing for diarrhea, there's like a 25 to 35% chance you don't have IBS, that you actually have this. But IBS is this catch-all where they're like, we don't know. And it's so the version, what I had, type 3, was extremely severe. Most people won't have it to that severity, but it's also like highly manageable. In fact, while I'm still struggling with elements from it, because again, mine's quite severe, the change in managing the specific symptoms that come from bile acid malabsorption, just treating it, have been tremendous, have been ginormous. So by the way, if you have IBS-D, frequent diarrhea, just look it up. Just look up bile acid malabsorption. And if it seems familiar to you, the diagnosis for it is literally so easy. There's a medication, it's called cholestyramine. It can't hurt you because it doesn't absorb in your system at all. It's essentially a resin. You drink it. It's not pleasant. I have to have it many times a day now, but it's not pleasant. And it binds to excess bile. And essentially, if you take it and within a few days, you no longer have diarrhea, you had bile acid malabsorption. And so nobody wants to talk about diarrhea. Nobody wants to talk about poop on the internet, but I'm here to sit here and just be like, if you have this thing, I might even isolate this clip for my channel and just be like, if you have diarrhea, please watch this. Please watch. If you've been told you have IBS-D, please watch this thing because you need to know that bile acid malabsorption exists. It actually is pretty important. But mine, again, the IBS or the stomach stuff, because IBS, again, being a catch-all, but I've understood that my intestinal problems and my digestive issues, I wouldn't have put in the brackets of IBS for now over a decade. There's too much other stuff going on with certain organs and certain medical history that have made things worse. And so, but there are still elements of what goes on in my gut, in my body that aren't fully explained, even with this bile acid malabsorption stuff. That's just been the biggest change. Treating that has been the biggest change of my life. Had I been treated for that back after I had my gallbladder removed, which by the way, if you've had your gallbladder removed and you have IBS-D, the chances that what you have is bile acid malabsorption has just gone way up. Just so you know, way up. Like way up. Like it might almost be weird if your IBS-D isn't actually BAM, as they call it. It would be, I think, I'm not a doctor, but I think if you have specifically IBSD and no gallbladder. I'm not saying everybody with no gallbladder, but those two, I'm pretty sure it's accurate to say you actually probably have BAM. Anyway, all of this related to my life would have been so different, by the way, if I had been treated for it shortly after I had my gallbladder removed when I was, I think I was 17 or 18, somewhere between 17 and 20, I had my gallbladder removed. I would have had to have been 17 because I remember what job I worked at. And I worked at that job like right up until my 18th birthday. And then very shortly after my 18th birthday, I switched to working at Verizon. Can you hear me now? Where was I? I'm going all over the place because this is a thing I'm thinking. Most of my day is consumed with health stuff. Like literally, it's my day in, day out what I'm mostly focused on and worrying about and figuring out and navigating. Taking way too many supplements. The ridiculousness of my closet, of my pharmacy closet, essentially. I've got a small pharmacy in my house. None of the good stuff though, because I refuse painkillers because of my history. Anyway, so no point in breaking in unless you need this resin. They diagnose you by basically taking the resin and seeing if it works. And if it doesn't, you excrete it. It doesn't matter. You'll have some weird yellow stuff in your poo. But if you have bile acid malabsorption, yellow poo already is not going to be all that surprising to you. Again, getting too in. This is all to talk about. Bring it back to the discussion about obesity. I was obese, and that's not a surprise to anybody. I keep looking at pictures of me a year ago, and I have this weird feeling where I'm like, I don't believe in fat shaming and that any individual, you shouldn't be bullied for being fat. And most people shouldn't be intervening on most other people for being fat. But I got to tell you, I don't know if it would have made a difference. So I don't even know if this feeling I have matters. But I feel like nobody talked to me about from people I love, because people in comment sections, sure, dude, you're getting fatter, and we're like, some people even be nice. I'm worried about how much weight you're putting on. But no one really in my life, though that's fair enough, I guess, because a lot of them know I already struggle with my weight, and it's not like I'm not aware, but I don't know that the habits and the addiction that I was feeding and the way it was hurting my health, for me personally, I don't know how to reconcile how to avoid fat shaming and the like. And being so careful not to fat shame when realizing I think I needed an intervention, like an alcoholic level intervention. As somebody who is, by the way, completely, I haven't touched alcohol, and I've fucked with it for a little bit a few years back. I didn't really ever have a problem with it, but I did a few years back going through a really tough breakup. People might remember because I drank on air, I think once or twice. And I could never drink much because of how sick it would make me and how it would affect pre-existing organ issues. But I have had struggles with other substances and stuff. And as a result have been clean of those substances for, it'd be like 13, 14 years now. And I've been just generally straight edge, as the kids call it. They don't call it that anymore. I think that's what my generation called it. But for a while, I've been not consuming much of anything. 2 years ago tried to use marijuana each night, or cannabis, I should say, to get to sleep every night, and it was helpful. But then it was also a problem because my sensitivity shoots through the roof. Or rather, desensitivity shoots through the roof kind of quickly, and the amount I was having to use in the evenings made me have then dopamine sort of withdrawals during the day, meaning I would just feel like crap and like I hated everything until at night when I would use it again. So I had to even stop that. I do though. I've been intervened for really bad habits, really bad addictions. And I think that the level of unhealthy, I understand nobody would have understood to do it because I already was dealing with chronic illness that was severe, that they knew about. And so it would have been easy enough to just be like, no, you guys are all wrong about it being anything to do with this. Because look at me now. I mean, here I am 80 pounds lighter, but my ability to go out and do stuff still isn't necessarily better. It is better, but I'm not going out and doing stuff still. I'm still not back to where I was a few years ago, where I could spend most days out of the house. I could travel an hour to the other side of Austin to hang out with, Matt and Arden. And I don't have that part of my life back, but my day-to-day quality of life and overall just feeling and the amount of time I'm spending just sick and hating life, way reduced. And a big part of that has been treating the obesity and the bile acid malabsorption. Those two both had to happen. So nobody would have known to intervene. So I'm not necessarily even saying we just don't we live in cultures where the extremes are both being so loudly represented. Either you get to just be a giant asshole to fat people, and that's advocated for, or you're not allowed to say a thing. And I think I needed somebody to say a thing, and I ended up having a bodily intervention, luckily before I died, because it wouldn't have been. It may be mostly good fortune that I didn't, because of how bad, like I said, my cholesterol and my blood pressure and everything were really bad. I was in the high risk area for, just a blood clot, a stroke, a heart attack, and the kind of shit that people have every day, but you're way more likely to when you are that unhealthy. And granted, I never broke 300 pounds. There are a lot of people living 300 pounds somehow more active than I was. My body just did not take well to it with all of my other medical issues. And the fact that actually specifically like high fat diets, which I was eating, I have to eat an extremely low fat diet now. My body just can't tolerate almost any amount my body will respond to. So it's more about like, what is the maximum level of response that I can deal with in a day and go about my normal life. And that's what I have to limit myself to. So all of this to say, it's very interesting news to find out that in the wake of these GLP-1 drugs, which I think it is actually a crime, or should be a crime. It is immoral that these are not being mass produced, supplemented by the government, just literally like at this point, steal them. Like, government, take it from them. I don't care if it financially destroys the 4 people who are becoming billionaires off of this thing. I legitimately am like, if all 4 of them become homeless as a result, that will be a small price to pay against the millions of lives these GLP-1 drugs would save. But right now, getting a GLP-1 prescription in the first place, very hard. And then if you get it, you are looking at a ginormous cost unless your insurance covers it. And your insurance probably only covers it if you have type 2 diabetes, which a lot of people don't. Obesity, regardless of fat shaming and all that stuff, you cannot deny that obesity is killing people. And so we have to be able to talk about that some way without going, you're fat and you're devalued, you're lesser in society, whatever. Of course, that's all true, by the way, that is how people treat you. I am aware already of how much better I am being treated just for now being, I don't know if I'd yet call myself thin. I'm pretty close to thin now though. Like when I stand up straight and I'm maybe sucking my gut a little bit, my stomach comes in behind my rib cage. But I still have love handles and stuff. I could still afford to lose 20 more pounds, and I wouldn't be 20 more pounds. I'd start to look like kind of Coke skinny. And trust me, I know that that's what weight I look Coke skinny at firsthand, and that is the specific adjective I can use to describe it. Anyway, that's where I would be. But I could afford to lose 20 more pounds or so and be good. It would take a little more than that to get to Coke skinny, really. Probably like 35 more pounds, and then people would be like, is he on the booger sugar? Is that what's going on? Is he using a little snorty fat medication? These GLP-1 drugs would literally save generations of people. And you have people out here who are trying to deregulate the pharmaceutical industry, all while right now, imagine it. Okay, obesity kills more people than cancer. If we knew there was a company who had the cancer drug, but they were only giving it to people who could afford it, and the insurance companies were only giving it to people who would cost them more money if they didn't give it to them, nobody would be, Luigi would have a lot more supporters in that scenario. Okay. That's what I'm saying here. That's the level of unacceptable that would be. Well, guess what? That's happened. Not with cancer, but the thing that's actually killing more people than cancer, which is obesity. And there is a drug that cost them less than $5 to produce that they are charging around $1,500 for. They have gotten way more back than the research and innovation that they have to cover. All of that has been covered. You could cover that 10 times over. I wouldn't, if the government wants to come and say, all right, look, you win $10 billion. The government's taking your patent, taking your facilities, and we're taking it over. And we're just going to distribute it. And it's going to be available with a small consultation with a pharmacist. I would probably still add that step to anybody who wants it to treat specifically obesity and then maintain and everything until better therapeutics come out. So speaking of these better therapeutics, and I know we have to talk about the AI. I said we were going to go short today and we haven't because we've gotten on a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. And so if this does end up as a clip out there, just so you know, this is from our show. The Lion is a podcast. Jimmy Snow has a podcast is coming back featuring conversations with people, topics that I much care more about or people I disagree with, discussions with people who can cover either side of those things. But go follow The Lion is a podcast where The Lion is a podcast is. Links will be in the description. There are these new treatments that may be developing because there has actually been the discovery of the specific neurons in your brain, or rather right now in mice's brain, but this is where a lot of things start, in the brain of a mouse. The specific neurons that fire that tell your body you're full. And that this could mean a few things. One, potentially that neuron firing could be induced by other drugs. However, that's not the most ideal way you would want to treat this. That's like a short-term thing. But let's be clear. My brain still doesn't have much of an experience of being full. It does a little bit now, mostly because I supplement fiber. I have to. So the fiber supplement kind of fills me up, but it's almost like now because things have been slowed down, there's not room. But if you were to give me bags of chips, and it didn't make me sick, if you just returned me to, or even did make me sick, but in the way it used to, I'm talking like a family-sized bag of chips I could have easily gone through in an afternoon, and just a constant snacking. My brain definitely doesn't shut that off, and it wants that flavor in the mouth. It wants to feel the textures. It wants to be occupied with all of that. That's just how my brain is, and that's part of this in talking about it being more like an addiction than it is just a simple like I like food and I can't stop the way people think it is. It's ridiculous what skinny people think being obese is like. They say the dumbest shit. Like, well, you should just decide not to. It's more like an addiction, much, much more like an addiction than it is like you just feel an impulse like, ooh, today I just really want some chocolate chip cookies. These future therapies could include gene therapy, basically targeting those neurons and making them actually operate correctly to say at an appropriate amount of time, like, no, you're full. Stop eating. It's better for you to stop eating. Because right now, these GLP-1s kind of do something similar. They basically are the hormone that tell you you're full, not the neurons. And so it's sort of artificially coming in there. And I tried the GLP-1 drugs for a short period of time, had a very bad response to them, had to stop. And then what little weight I had lost on them, like 15 pounds or so, I put back on, and then eventually would even be heavier than I had been before. This was all before that peak of none of this was in the last year when you've seen me lose weight. None of them were the GLP-1 drugs. I worry often that the GLP-1 drugs exacerbated the bile acid malabsorption because it seems like that makes sense because of the symptoms I got, but I can't prove any of that, and I don't know if that's the thing. I'd have to consult with a doctor. That's not an actual medical assessment. It's funny how the symptoms that started that I stopped the GLP-1 drugs kind of persisted and seemed very similar to the symptoms that then got worse. That I had to, anyway, I have no idea whether that was what caused it or not, but I do know what the studies of things look like so far and how they have changed, and that for most people, they are incredible, despite the fact that all medications have side effects. But it would be better if your body could do it and your brain could signal it, and you didn't have this scenario where you are putting in a hormone artificially, your body's becoming dependent on it because, amongst other things, if you start these GLP-1 drugs, to keep the weight off, you have to stay on them. You can't just take the amount that gets you to lose the weight, because that's all they do is they make you not hungry. Like, that's it. It's just the hormone that makes you go, ooh, I've already eaten. Now, for me, it meant I would eat a little bit. And if I tried to eat more than it, I'd literally throw up. Like, it would make you feel so full because it would slow your system down so much. So, more ideally would be your brain actually properly does it. And this is the potential of this discovery, these neurons that potentially we could highlight, or rather we could exploit these brain pathways of these neurons and return the regulation of appetite control, which would be incredible. Now, clinical trials, they're supposed to start literally within 2 years. And it would also mean a non-invasive therapy for obesity and new drugs to help suppress appetite. And I just want to say, once again, more than anything, please steal it. Whoever is allowed to do that from the government, please steal. If it succeeds, please take it or buy out at a reasonable price, because that's realistically the most likely thing. Do not stop letting these companies put huge paywalls on literally living. Everybody I am speaking to, everyone who will hear my voice, whether you know it or not, someone has died that you are connected to. Probably several people have died in connection to complications from obesity, especially if you are in America, especially then. They have either had a shorter life than they would have, or they would have even had a worse life. And you haven't been able to have that person in your life the way you would want to. If you are struggling with obesity, I understand just telling you have to make changes isn't going to do it. As I said, I'm somewhat lucky in that I got so sick I had no choice. Now I still have the sickness to deal with, and I still have all this shit that I'm dealing with, and it's not fun. And I hope I get to have a life again, because my house is cool, but I've basically been only in it for 2 years, except for doctor's visits and a couple of like trips to parks every now and then, grocery stores close by and stuff. For about 2 years now, I've basically, it's too bad I hadn't committed a crime, because I've basically been under house arrest for 2 years essentially. And I'm trying to restore and get some of that life back. But not everyone's going to be so quote unquote lucky. And me just telling you isn't because I can't hold you accountable in any way. I don't know whether some sort of intervention would, but also just the knowledge is, just as we see with the opioid epidemic, it won't matter telling you if you don't have a support system that is there to help you. It won't matter shaming you if you don't have a support system of people you want to live not just longer for, but healthier for. And that you don't open up to them about that's a goal of yours and you need their help to stay accountable. Because just like your friends can be douches when you're done drinking, where it's, yeah, I know you're not really drinking, but like, what about this one party or whatever? Like, sorry, we just won't invite you to things anymore. When you have the actual healthy friends who are like, we will go out of our way to make sure that we're taking care of you here because we love you. When you have that kind of relationship with people, that is the difference between whether or not people break addictions, whether or not people stop drinking, or not. And so I believe it's not going to be under Trump, especially with RFK Jr., who I think he wants to stop GLP-1 drugs. Whoever it has to be, something has to change. And if the politicians really serve the people, certainly keeping alive should be the number one thing. And right now there is the equivalent of a cure for cancer being held away, only given away when an insurance company has to pay for it because you actually have the coverage. So we have to pay for it. And we've recognized that paying for this treatment for cancer, again, this is a metaphor, not literally cancer, but paying for this treatment for cancer will cost us less than the care for like the complications from the cancer. That's right now who is actually getting their GLP-1 drugs paid for. You have to already be a type 2 diabetic in most cases. Most insurances otherwise will not cover it. It costs $5 to produce a month's worth, and it's like $1,500 to buy it outright. There are some compounding pharmacies that are doing it. Technically, they're not supposed to be. How they're getting this drug, it's not entirely clear. There's a lot about it that's weird, okay? But I'm very, very hopeful and here to take the risk of being, canceled again. So, it's like, fine. I'm used to it for what will be construed by some people as fat shaming, but I don't really care because it's on the right side of things. And the fact of the matter is when those drugs are massively available or these therapeutics are massively available, because we've already seen this true in just places where they're more available, it is very interesting how the tune changes from people of like, inside, outside, what you physically look like, beautiful on any side, all that fine. That doesn't matter. That's not the stuff that matters. You're going to die. And if you're the one who's like, you don't know about my health. Actually, did you know this person was at this weight? Fine, then it doesn't apply to them. But arguing back and fighting back against that shit is harming so many people. If you try to fully summarize that as if you are dealing with obesity and that is complicating your health, if your blood is coming back with bad cholesterol, with bad blood sugars, bad A1Cs, bad blood pressure, it is going to shorten your life, possibly dramatically. And it is, as you already know, worsening your life. And so I hope one of the things we are going to consider in the future, Medicare for all, obviously, but in the short term, something to punish in a way that forces them to release this drug to the public or allow generics to be created or something has to happen, because people will die and they don't care. Literally, if they would just make the price fair, millions of less people would die. But if they make it less fair, they'll make less money. So guess which one they're doing? The last story I have for you today is there has apparently been a very big surge in AI-powered sex dolls in China, rather from this Chinese maker. 30% sales increase in 2025 because they are now starting to integrate AI into the systems to make them seem more human to discuss with them. And I find this fascinating that already when you just think about people who would have a sex doll, which that's not to try and cast judgment or aspersions on people. People do things when they're lonely. People have the things they like. Fine. I know people are going to be like, he definitely has a doll. I don't imagine I would have a doll. Maybe a robot one day, if the robot was pretty convincing. I don't know. Anyway, but the fact that it is causing such a surge that now you can simulate a conversation with them, that does actually fascinate me in a lot of ways, that there is people wanting to break their loneliness as a part of breaking their sexual loneliness. They actually want that like emotional loneliness broken too. I don't know. I think it's a very fascinating thing to discuss. And so I hope it influences your take on the question of the day, because it is very interesting. And a reminder, that question of the day, basically, will you have an AI companion in the future? And if so, what would the limits be? A personal assistant, a sexual companion, a friendly companion, I don't know, just a best bud that keeps track of your stuff? Because I really feel like there's going to be a lot of people who are initially like, oh, that's creepy, I'm not going to do that. But then like, think about Jarvis from Iron Man and how bad you wanted Jarvis. Because that's at least that's the level that I feel like most people are going to say, well, yeah, I want a little sarcastic, just gets me, bounces off of me little buddy in my ear all the time. Okay, Jarvis I get. But I want to know, what would your limits be? Would you have them as a companion, as a best friend, as a lover? What would it be? Would it be okay to fall in love with an AI? Is having that chemical response in your brain in response to a non-actual human but simulation of a human? Does that matter? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? If obviously, if we do studies and we find out it causes other like massive problems, but just isolating it to that, if a person is able to have that feeling of security and love and all of that other stuff, does it matter that it's with an AI, a non-sentient being, if they otherwise would feel like they just couldn't have that relationship with anybody. Be interesting. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. I feel like there's very nuanced conversations that could happen around that. But in the meantime, we should be back on Thursday, and I think both of our wonderful co-hosts will be here. I think you will hear from Promise and Alyssa. Do check out. I would love to see a little more engagement. I know I can't force you all to, but I would love it to see a little bit more engagement on the question of the day this week, because it is something that I find so very, very fascinating. Remember, if you have IBS-D, look up what bile acid malabsorption is, especially if you notice the presence of like yellow bowel movements. And if you've ever had your gallbladder removed, because that would be, again, indicative of specifically type 3 bile acid malabsorption. But there are 2 other types, and you could definitely still have it even if you haven't had your gallbladder removed. It's just like a big tell if you got both. I've been Jimmy Snow. This is The Line as a Podcast. We will see you next episode.